I appreciate that. Okay. Cool. Never mind. Can you watch that game?
Wait,
Where do you go?
You know the judges? All three? Okay. Great. Get started. Thank you.
We have all three judges, both contestants.
Yeah.
Good deal. Well, this is not going to be on there, but, okay, we all good?
Yeah.
Let's get this thing started.
Okay. Everyone good for me to send the app out? Very good. Alright, it's sent. Let me know when everyone gets it. Okay, did everyone get it? And is everyone good?
Yeah, I'll be back in 10 seconds.
We're about to start. Right, please grab that one. Okay, cool. Overview 1, 1 refused to anything else. These interviews drop later 1 is true, making time to know you are 6 minutes, you are first, every time compete, so 200 complete defense after commercial line. 1 martial arts, long 1 for 1 versus 1 7 1 and C2. 1 error can negate multiple layers, excuse, C already time crunch 3 sets minutes, 2 NBs, really unfair thing you clap to whenever you run. She the negative S can see the affirmative. Potential level offense, preemptive violate already turns under the framework A fill. Education, if thinking about different fill is a real life ability to use personal choices and choose a way to live our lives. LD is the only form where we can debate about philosophy that is education 100% unique to LD's B strategy. It's also with 1 error framework, any potential level office, you read a framework that is used by office and a bunch of turns the having their impossible 4 minutes 6 C is time 2 have to justify the framework is way longer than offense 3 is the negative measure at the after substantiality violation by reading method S1 is you and A stress you other reasons incentivize whatever to read multiple lives in front of 1 of substantiality to be offers for the lead A's and substitute the size question how long you spend it, which means the negative substantiality around B net times 2 have message trying the 1 error and 2 and flexibility class either 1 hit trigger 1 only having to answer 1 or 2 A saves me half the time which keep 4 4 is roll that determines who the false you're using a system with validity as after an A B is given resolution A5 to negation neither shoot first 2 which means the straight C activity be the purpose of the exception knowledge pursue the truth, or to expose, keep death, of expiration, always on specificity, jurisdiction, depends on question, whether the judge has the scope of the game, all the entities don't get on truth, and they just prove the opposite, all that is bad, not that the resolution is wholly falsely framework. Moral realism is true, there's absolute truth, is metaphysically, otherwise we cannot make moral claims merely claim to real absolute wrong, just saying ethical same entity, relatives and circular returning relatives, saying universe, truth, and authority, realism, see, acts, argument, goodness, naturality, inherently is wide, three independent wars, ontology, science, and logical, Mogan, 17, acts, positive, inherently, goodness, naturality, nothing causes this, ontological arguments, use value, abstract, from divinity, divinity, further, we not divine, divinity would not be further, therefore, some use divine, there is inherently, acts, argument, our purpose, explanation, rational, only if such a reliable guide to truth that it can only be just by actual world, better worlds, actualized, logical, true, in every possible world, only possible to be actualized, logical requirements, function, the same logical ones, in that perspective, physical causality, ability, structure, reality, speaking different existence rather than a particular cause that mandates it to exist. Matter is not light, X means a Y, where otherwise it meets conditions Y and Z, which means that consequence of theories of world community and RC arguments necessitates a paradigm of ethics, and it's not placed even as a set of rather mere means of enacting ethical principles in the natural world, the institutions, physical entities that can receive that physical good that makes their existence irrelevant insofar as they merely serve as a pleasure of the metaphysical truth. That's the net of ethics is not natural, more natural fallacy, impulsive goodness, to observe probably since the two are fundamentally separate. For example, if we do the action that proves pleasure good, not logic, follow the pleasure goodness, and probably since the fact they strive same thing, not making same thing. Two open question arguments, so is goodness, so is not awesome observer probably like X impossible. The answer to the question is X good is either A, X is that same as good, our answer means ontology good is good, or B, X is not same as good, which is not natural true. Only intuition in their cases with this view lays me in no date. If more probably is not natural, all we can do is know that claims is good by considering the claim itself, intuition self evident, the evidence of its own possibility, self evidence, moral intuition, more like what is logically possible than the evidence of the table in front of me. Thus, the standard is consistent with ethical intuitionism for one, all framers last intuitions. The only reason we have more framers is draws conclusions against our intuition. Useful tells us to kill our mom to save two strangers, we not act on a useful means that we use intuition to determine whether rejection is true, makes results of framing self defeating intuition is a tiebreaker between second level reason, which means even if you think the frame is close, you automatically default to the obvious account. Identifying what counts as a default and cannot be disproven through two theoretically for intuitions. One, critical thinking intuitions merely to require the use of argument, initial and selective experience for us to be to actually engage in the process of our agreement. They think how to respond to proofs to concerning to real education. Two, small age schools only requires a lot of arguments, prevents and advantage knowledge programs. Three is ground all other framers subtly ground advantage either side. You can argue anything, be intuitive or wake up between consequences and intent, which means that moves reservoir allows for maximum amount of ground. Three, intuition key to A, encompassing all the cognitive system we use to process the framework in a moral values, which means all other framers not you already deliberate impacts B value pros and recognize single ethical out the complex and more problems general more disagreement. My framers all we can recognize multiple legitimate values, including one meter bound to hydrogen benefit. Your framework makes them more refined. C is acting morally less often. Gonder and so 15 participants taking until IQ test 23% cheated. People are less likely to cheat relying on intuition. And 4 is person many read or ethical variants more likely to be argued hard viewer assessment process justification. Intuition always always foundation ethical judgment is the most simplistic framework, therefore most likely to be correct. 5 performance in more than based on expression of parsing and intuition. When we come to a moral agreement in the course argumentation, we appeal to the value system through expression. Impact on one distinction between procedural substance intuition. Procedural always comes to determine such the ability to access and express the intuition in the first like 20. That substance intuition incoherent from either impulse can have any particular intuition, which makes it legitimate. 1, 2 epistemic confidence in it, use epistemic confidence. A result of a calculated propositive frameworks and arguments possible only true binary true false condition not true decisions B is semi confidence first higher quality philosophy instead of a stronger defense arguments and field which actually test underlying words and frameworks rather than just extending arguments for often evaluate framework often based on the contextualization of the person rather framework A destroys this when be advocate and recon interpret what my framework means to me a proximity of word is you know I know better than you the advocacy I contend the United States operate with the expression of fossil fuels from the federal lands and waters all depending preference cessation along the violated by general advocacy convention I 1 is fossil fuel extraction of operate intuitive A extraction would be a violation of intrinsic value the purpose of instrumental one which would make it the resolution the equivalent of we ought to prohibit the violations of intrinsic good for a sake of instrumental, which is the operator true because the intrinsic always precedes the instrumental B is supposed to exact extraction is subsequently by unintuitive failures, including in 19, a large majority of Americans say drilling for oil and natural gas off the coast of the land increased 57%, said that energy exploration should be reduced on federal lands, 53% said it should be reduced offshore, 32% said it should say less than 15% should report an increase. 2x arguments affirm the environment is an agent, not a violation of their intuitive agent A. Self-legislating the ability to self-legislate means all other people intrinsic value, the absence of content of other entity, except for its own path and assigns a value upon given its own ends, universe essentially self-legislating years, nothing externally universe use some kind of value, which means they must be given a governance that we don't understand how IB emergence constant and outcome process of parts, but natural emergence that given a specific structure means pointing out individual instances of things cannot within the universe cannot carry don't carry a constant of property through the universe as a whole doesn't carry property C exponential power only through the universe constant explain that origin ethical intuition our intuition or index in the sense of the good we didn't create what exists outside of ourselves that we discover implicitly we presume we're endowed with the sense of the universe that we created the ability to sense what it defines the good also taught all the groups we cannot violate the universe since the system would never design agent perfect harming itself. We'll skip the Tony's theory stuff and that's also external for Christian and 19 it is collected by institutions find reinforcement of things of climate change that appear intuitively obvious opposed to their products of conscious reflection response to climate change concerns nature is citizens focus on human existence on a instrumental relation this most relevant essential the method one to counter see that is we do as through the ideally actually skip that 2 the count for also impacts that action it is morally culpable action state bear not to the factor with 3 otherwise ethical theories old dangerous consequence with external immune and moral atheism cannot control being 144 action possible no way to want to different amounts of pain pleasure how can 2 will migrate 5 industrial field increase justify fast as I view in the law certainly have 4 happen again 5 6 reminds the and 6 can't know the action good or not until after it was taken, which means the judge cannot determine the egg is good or not. 7 egg purely impossible to expand it. 5 are lunches, any big debate for people who made their living off for anybody similar to economic change may use to 1,361 forecast for foremost and throwing monkeys if I equal probability all outcomes. Okay, didn't read 8, 9, 10, 11, and then cut mented at outcomes and didn't read 1.
There's other stuff not read.
Yeah, the Tony's theory card.
Okay, and nothing else, everything else is read.
Let me make sure. Yeah.
Okay, good for cross.
Yeah.
Are intuitions ever illegitimate? For example, if I have like an intuition to kill someone for no reason,
You can't have an intuition to kill someone.
why not? What constitutes an intuition?
Sure. So it's an initial intellectual property that you have when you first see a situation. Okay, that's what.
Wait, okay, your contention, like at least the first argument on your contention is just like a majority of Americans think that drilling should stop.
Yeah,
It's just like I should
more
do what I
intuitive than
think.
not.
How do you know that that's like intrinsic intuition? Because you said that what we think we want to do is not an intuition always.
I mean, you can make the argument for why the Bulls' offense is incoherent under the framework, but that's not a reason why the framework
Well,
is
okay,
bad.
can you explain why it is coherent?
Because we think that more people think it's intuitive than not.
Wait, but how does saying someone wants to do something mean that that is an intuition they have?
We think that more people think that the situation of the resolution is an intuitive question that arose.
Okay, does the framework say individuals should act on their own intuitions or what the majority thinks is intuitive?
I mean, there's two forms of intuition, right? There's procedural intuition and then substantive intuition. A procedural intuition would violate your ability to be an intuitive agent in the first place. The substantive intuition would
No,
be
I
your-
understand how to evaluate between intuitions. I'm just
Okay.
asking which intuitions. Is it individual intuitions or like majoritarian intuitions?
I don't understand what you mean.
Like if I'm
individual
taking an
intuitions.
action, do I do
The
that action
actor's
based on-
intuition?
Yes. Does the actor do it based on their own intuition or based on what the majority?
Yeah, as long as it doesn't violate someone's procedural ability.
Wait, so
to
in the
establish
context of the
intuitions.
government, why does the poll matter? Because the people are not
Because
the
we think that
actors.
the people are representative of the government.
Okay, but
in a
they're not. You
democracy.
said it's the actor, whoever's taking that action.
Right,
are
and the
not.
people represent that actor. I mean,
Okay,
if
so
you win a
it's-
poll that the people in the government think that
Okay, so when I
it's
take an
false,
action, so when I individually take an action, I act according to what I individually think is intuitive, right? Under the
as
framework.
long as it doesn't violate someone's procedural ability to be an intuitive agent.
Okay, can you explain the difference between procedural and substantive intuition?
I thought you said you understood it.
That's what I said that.
You
that's
said,
what-
I understand the difference. I'm
Dude,
not
stop
gonna let
being
you
a dick,
explain
answer
it.
the question.
Okay, I already explained this. Procedural violates your ability to be an intuitive agent in the first place. Substantive intuitions are what are substantively intuition or intuitive
What,
in a
what
situation.
constitutes an agent? Like
A
what makes up
Person who
what
has
an agent is?
intuitions, like a
No,
person
no,
who can generate
no,
intuitions.
not like who is an agent. What constitutes being an agent? Because you said procedural
person
intuition
who can
violate that.
Be an like a person who has intuition
No, you said a procedural intuition is something that
violates someone else's ability to establish intuitions to the world.
Okay, so what are things that violate someone else's intuition?
The offense, that is procedural. The
What's that mean?
axiarchism
That doesn't
point is
explain
all
the difference.
procedural offense. It says the environment is an intuitive agent and you're violating that ability for
Right,
the environment to be an
intuitions,
intuitive agent.
are intuitions like formed by birth? Are they just like something we all individually have? Are they formed by like our external realities? Like,
Well, they're not empirical, so definitely not formed by external realities.
can our intuitions be affected by external realities?
No.
So if someone like
They're a priori
gives me a
according to
lesson and like I don't know teaches me like extraction is bad, can I intuitively know extraction is bad based on that lesson?
I mean, no.
Like, okay. I'll start prepping. stop at 5337. Wait, actually, let me see. Okay, 322. It's one then case, and the order on case is just the order was in the Linux, so select the underview framework. Did you get the doc?
I had to hit my thumb to see. Okay, I just got it. Let me down this. It's not downloading for some reason. Oh, okay. Okay, it's fine. I'll just use the.
Okay, everyone. Settler colonialism is the permeating structure of the nation which tries the elimination of it, just like land, the occupation of settlers, the permeation of nature, the days ago, to child states, interact with slavery, attacking 12 horizons, and the settler colonial nation state cultural appropriation of it, like land, that is sovereignty over all things, so make land the source of capital destruction of individual relations to land, represents epistemic, ontological, cosmological, policy, policy, not public database, research, ancient occupation, settler community destruction, non-abandoned, also subject for slavery, child states, about land, become the property, who account landless, the state person that is the asset, the child states, actually believe that can be paid payment, when having a property, land, settlers are diverse, such as by decolonization, as bad for all people, to every contradictory decolonization, designs based on transcolonization, into 1970, to be filled by track towards liberation, decolonization must hold the repatriation of land. No lands are federal lands. The presumption that the settler state has the authority to constantly remap the borders of tribal lands to justify the creation of a public commons under the guise of federal sovereignty is inseparable from the genocidal erasure necessary to extend the bare claim to ownership. It's a government. 19. The imposition of borders on settler states, establishing ownership, topics is bad. It's maintained by the nation, indigenous community borders, seeks self sovereignty, create declaration which rests on fields inside by steps borders made possible modern politics. The sovereign authority to determine who's allowed to have borders and where the civil allowed the social practice and consider of the nation self to the people of the province state sovereignty not only state borders but also using internal border practices to force local to people to specific towards it defined by the solid state borders enabling to possession as organized political authority through solid sovereignty rather than nations to towards our by second battery state borders they left the self population of borders than new liberty territory to genetics to territories and legal system of the batteries of governance and self society built on top of the right peoples of land the legal system of our existing treaty relationships all alternatives to fossil fuels from renewables to biofuels are projects in settler capitalism which regard the theft of ancestral lands and construction of sacrifice zones to eliminate native life worlds in the name of green energy. Gonzalez 21. Racialized communities are displaced on the climate vote by measures to mitigate emissions with parts of Mohawk to lands without consent. Hydrogen displaced and replicate sacrifice zones of capitalism and green energy force conservation and improve the plants appreciate ancestral territory biofuels increase land growth that restore forest even next to those fossils they replace those who occupy sacrifice zones to special just by possession of green energy. Settler intuition is genocide. The capacity for change is rendered through the absence of native futurity. Colonization is fundamentally psychic premise on a genocidal desire for wholeness as a fundamental feature of language. Young 17 secondly the theory of privacy of normative disciplines and then personalized told intention of the political with fire person as the essence of his wanted unit the death rate constantly began to look at the child with a future on which eliminated whiteness the death rate indicates that such a boarding cycle within relations it is possible to escape the objective not to overcome the drive of genocide. At first people in the name of progress the single body politics is sheer futurity relied upon the litigation of the oath of the bad the dangerous the rate that does so is other forget the normal had no shared time so once in Spain between spaces nobody the federal government is tactics the escalating some which modality difference language down to top reflecting universal meanings this sliding along chain certification never truly fixed or many constructed theory quoting points constants that fixed ideas the same fast structure meaning of the ages quoted by the there which politics is teacher anticipation that organizes the meaning of nations citizens sovereignty subject that partisan methodology that is inexhaustible and raised the present natural tools before 12 subject and language bodies our marches after a child which types with that most of being the world is not a live or practices the sign the indigenous person is matters as already outside and that's not history already saying their explanation of balance as a result of symbolic systems and discourse of power dynamics denies the centrality of land and settler colonialism Rifkin and 9 emphasis about politics sense coming at the expense of geopolitics and production of race spaces way of envisioning sovereignty that such council decide the indigenous people sell states rather than only their life but also religion political collectivity occupancy this role by native people can be vigilant less about particular domains than about political authority the ability to define the context of law politics such as it draws attention toward efforts to consider writing such a control American limits of racialized discourses different referring to political self-evidence while everyone's where your American race including child sale policy they cannot affect the structure of format sovereignty. Thus, the only alternative is a refusal of the act and settler ideology. It's unconditional. Simpson 16. The political describes affidavit possibility, but also professional what should be with reasonable sense, but also theory of the political notes we pronounce over and over again. Refuse to consent to the operations of the state refusal operating like the government president possible states to time refusal abilities of the research and help anything beyond what counted through the channel recognition of refusal on to the actually with force of preservative for the experience and operates as their prevention consent to the ongoing sense of this all over the refusal the elementary references state the role of the ballot is embodied refusal of settler logics that get normalized within the settler psyche naturalized dispossessive on settler colonialism is reliant on the everyday reiteration of affective understandings known as settler common sense, which is the one who sees iterative refusal a necessary project to build towards decolonization. Rifkin 13. Settler common sense suggests non-native acts to territories given a march occupancy settlement as a system of justice to be imposed non-native being required to sovereignty not the center of critical attention and body recognition and to essentially needs attention not relation in place that these structure where aspiration of settler occupancies or near the psychological part of the operating exertion non-native authority of over territorial capacity by which settler non-speakers is being considered style review self-closum or marginalized their having no station state aims and mappings to the court and mappings or interpretations that the judge to validate the act as a research project which means that they don't get to weigh the implementation of the case under their framework. One, plan focus for sake debate to a test second statement leaves the rest of the applicant question they should be responsible for the ways that the knowledge is constructed and used because that produces the best model practice and ethics. Second, the case of prior question informs the value of the game. If we debate train students to be violent outside the runs that comes first. Third, performance you're an educator responsible for judging behavior as well as production of the app. That means you should drop them. If we win a link, 4, vote neg on presumption. Fiat is illusory. The app does nothing, which is that discussing the politics of the plan is irrelevant. Voting app will produce the advantages discussed under the paragraph, but arguments spelled to how we do debate as a whole. 5, their appeal to procedural fairness and clashes. Genocidal, saying 21 ideologies to ended people's insufficient ideologies internalized among non-native communities. Their internal motives themselves is established procedure that upholds the nature of self-restraint that ideals are better than policies in every space. Into people pressure to convert to self-culture or to legitimacy of lives in our self-crossing percent people's passports, personalism, or it'll perpetuate the underview and the after the overview. They get 1 year theory, but it's not dropped the debater just by spamming shells, which kills substance debate. Only quarter 1 has since informs critical thinking is the reason we have a topic in the first place. If the app gets 1 year RBIs, then the neg gets 2 year RBIs for the same reciprocity argument. Today, we didn't say neg theory, so app theory first is relevant, but the K comes before app theory. It's a question of racial bonds in round trains debate for CG. Harder for minorities. Negative must concede the app contention. Counter will defend the violation. 1, it's arbitrary. The argument boils down to the neg must make debate easier because it's hard to answer contention terms. Justifies fundamentally removing all neg often. Second, it's racist because it justifies. Second, it makes it impossible to debate because the app can make a self-serving framework like we must prevent racism, and then we can't prove that the app was racist, so we can win. Third, term Philad results in debaters bastardizing philosophers and not understanding how it applies to real life at all. They just asserted that it's key to Philad. Strats is false and Curtis smarter ass with rigorous contention off. It's times is false. Just read a longer contention. Granted, don't put on presumption of permissibility. It's racist just by saying that we can never condemn any action which forecloses the possibility of any action and means that we can't condemn genocide, rape, etc., which is necessarily bad model debate and it's bad for accessibility. Also we get new to our responses to 1 year recontextualizations of permissibility triggers because they want frame that way in the 1AC the framework. No mechanism for determining if an intuition is legitimate or not. For example, if a white cop had an intuition to shoot a black person, they shouldn't just act on that. It means that double bind either A, they cannot condemn those intuitions, which are morally abhorrent and prove our links, or B, they need some framework to determine the legitimacy of intuitions, which is arbitrary. The moral realism argument is a link. Their critique of naturalism appeals to essence and divinity are the same logic used by settlers to justify land in the name of religion, manifesting logic, relativism. We are not a critique of relativism. You can say injustice death is unconditionally wrong, but still say that you need to use consequences to achieve that. The axiarchism argument prove it with the arguments above it relies on divinity, which is bad. The naturalism circle argument, intuitions collapse in naturalism since our intuitions are based on naturalist properties. The reason that I know that I have an intuition that something like death is bad is because I can visualize that, which answers the double blind argument. Egoism, it's not true. And another link, they create a universal conception of how humans act, which is a historical, non-scientific, and based entirely on Western conceptions of science and individuality, which with all indigenous communal understandings, the lacewing evidence, intuitions are arbitrary, they change all the time, etc. Proven by Americans changing mind of prohibition, gay marriage, slavery, etc. Second, no Bartlett. One intuition is how do I know that my actions based on some essence of my mind versus natural properties in the real world. That was cross-sex. Third, the frameworks collapse to intuitions is wrong. People can do things against their intuitions, like holding back your desire to eat sugar, regress. Don't vote on skepticism. That was above. Also, just because something is a prerequisite does not mean that it's normative. That's a fallacy of origin. Intuitions are key. The framework does not incorporate every other thing. Not true that all frameworks are aligned with our intuitions, which means. Actually, it's also a question of whose intuitions you are abiding by, because in cross-sex they said that it's individualistic in some instances and pluralistic in others.
Okay, good for cross.
Yeah.
What's the link to the K?
Which one? There's multiple ones.
What is the link to the K? Like, I want you to just explain one of them at this point.
Okay, one of them, the plan's understanding of federal and public lands.
How does the plan understand federal public lands?
Because the plan says federal public lands and waters. Argument is that
So-
geographical naming is not neutral, but relies on an understanding of borders that grants sovereignty to the government's ability.
If
to
I win that the
determine
app breaks
federal
down that
public lands.
conception, do I answer this argument?
Well, no, because you'll be like, we stop extraction, which is how we break it down. Argument is that granting coherence to the concept of federal public lands and waters in the first place.
So I should just
that
not be able
geographical
to say the
naming-
words federal public lands and water?
It's not saying that words, it's that assuming that construction of borders is something that is legitimate in the first place is violence, because it assumes that the government has the authority to create a federal public lands and waters in the first place. Argument is no lands are federal or public lands because they belong to indigenous people.
Okay.
That was just the first link.
That's fine. let's talk about like this permissibility as racist stuff. How is it racist to say that we should justify actions based on intent, not consequences?
Well, it's the conclusion of permissibility is that any argument is permissible. Argument is that that is racist because it means that we can't condemn things like genocide, murder, etc., which we know is wrong. It's also unintuitive to say that something is always permissible.
So intuitions
under
matter?
your framework. No, I'm saying under your framework, permissibility makes no
Okay.
sense.
Why is violence against indigenous people bad?
Well, our argument is that we shouldn't have to justify why it is bad. Which
Yeah,
is
but why shouldn't you have to justify it?
Why shouldn't we have to justify it? Because it's like morally important to have to explain why death is bad.
Why is morally important things
Also,
bad?
we'll make a distinction between
Why?
our arguments about settler society. Our argument is that there is a structure of settler society.
You're not
that
answering my
requires
argument.
Indigenous people
I'm
to
saying, why is that structure bad?
Why is which structure bad?
The one that's anti-settler?
Because
Or,
the
I mean,
elimination of
anti-Indigenous
native people to secure a settler world is unethical.
Why is it unethical?
Because under whatever framework you use, it is bad to sacrifice native people, and asking us to justify that is exactly what we are critiquing.
Okay.
Because it appeals to some normative
So
framework.
it
Our
appeals
argument
to
is that
your
normative framework
intuition
cannot-
that we should all as a judge or as
No,
an
you are
opponent.
okay. This is just assuming that. First of all, no, it doesn't, because our argument is that why does settler society need to eliminate natives? If it was intuitive that we should protect native lives, then we wouldn't see things like boarding schools, we wouldn't see things like reservations, we wouldn't see things like the epidemic of missing and murdered indigenous women and girls and throughout the world. We wouldn't see things like the destruction of tribal lands, the desecration of indigenous homelands. If it's really intuitive that we shouldn't murder people, then why do we see so much of it?
That's fine. The settler intuition is genocide argument. What's the warrant?
The Young evidence says that settler society requires that our intuitions are based on this conception of identity that necessarily relegates indigenous understandings as something that is primitive and uncivilized. You can see this throughout history through things of boarding schools where white settlers have attempted to strip indigenous people of their indigeneity because it was viewed as something that is unintuitive, i.e. indigenous religions, indigenous cultures were viewed as something that is in opposition to our intuitive understandings of what actual people should act like, what they should look like,
Wait, it sounds like you're just making a psychoanalysis argument and then inserting the word intuition.
What?
Like, this is not what the card
settler
says at
intuitions
all.
are bad. That is what the card says.
Okay.
It specifically name
That's fine.
drops boarding schools, which is the example I just gave.
Yeah, okay, I'll start from. That's 159 left. Order will be the AF then the K. The AF is gonna start on truth testing, then the permissibility stuff, then the AF offense, then the K. I'll send all the cards because there are a couple.
Is the after anywhere?
Nah. Or, I mean, I guess on the links that the K.
I don't have Wi-Fi, so.
Actually, it's fine. I probably won't even end up reading the cards, so I'll just send the cards after if I do read them. But I probably won't. Okay, let me know when everyone's ready. Everyone good? Cool.
They conceded truth testing even if it's valid. It's the only thing that's contingent. You concede it's written on the ballot. Every tournament renders to handbook and NSC handbook explicitly point class intrinsic activity, and it controls the internal link to every pragmatic reason for why people would vote against truth testing, i.e. all of the answers that they're going to make in the 2-1-R, because the rules are the basis for prep. Even if comparative rules are theoretically verbal, it's an internal link by the fact that we operate under the assumption of truth testing, which was our argument. Winning truth testing means the round's over. They don't have any topical offense per if I feedback their links, and it doesn't prove the resolution false. To me, the links are floating, non unique to sense. They don't prove the topic true or false, which means that you vote out on truth testing, going for presumption, permissibility, and presumption. We're not going to go for the shell itself, but we're just going to go for the argument that it means you have to grant me one of them. We're getting permissibility, which was a conceded argument. They say that it's racist. There's no argument for why it's racist. First, you can just use intents as a basis for justifying action instead of consequences. Two is that a logic argument, even if it is the case that it's racist, taken to the truth that way, because it would lead to more racist arguments in the future, which means that if it's true that permissibility is triggered, then we should not take those actions in the first place. The intentions come first. You concede induction fails, incoherent, justify past, justify future. There's no logical straightening have before happen again. This takes out the entirety of the critique, because the entirety of the critique is the idea that past events have justified the future of the way that indigeneity has structured the world now, and also all of their links are reliant on the fact that in the past something has happened. It's a conceded argument that triggers permissibility, and a conceded argument for why permissibility affirms. You shouldn't even flow the 2-R at this point. The offense section, we're going to go for the X argument stuff. It was cold conceded. The environment is an agent, a violation of another intuitive agent. Self-legislation, the ability to self-legislate makes an object capable and intrinsic value, and the universe has that ability due to regress. There's nothing external to the universe itself to impose some kind of value on it, which means that it must govern itself even if we don't understand how or why. This link turns the K because it means that we respect the environment as an agent. We should never colonize things like the environment, which resolves for settler ontology in the first place, but we'll answer the K. Starting on the links, the federal limit link is incoherent. The point of the F is that we destroy the borders. There are two parts of the F. Point to this. One is the environment as an intuitive agent would mean that validates the ability to be that via establishing things like borders or colonizing with managerialist mindsets is bad. Two is that Christian evidence literally says that we should reorient the way that we view the land. So there's no mutual exclusivity to this argument. The all stuff fossil fuels are bad argument. One is the resolution of value statement, which means we don't defend alt, we just defend the fact that it falls the prohibition of fossil fuel, the prohibition of extraction is bad. Two is we agree this agrees with the F renewables equals a managerialist mindset, which means that they're unintuitive in the first place. Per the Christian evidence, 3 is we don't feel on a shift to renewables, nor have they ground that renewables is inevitable, which means there's no link to this argument. The settler intuition is genocide argument. One is that these are incoherent intuitions. Those are incoherent intuitions. Our argument is that the substantive intuitions that violate the procedural ability to establish intuitions in the first place outweigh. 2 is our argument is that those are bad intuitions. 3 is truth testing frames this out because it's a link to the framework, not a link to the offense. Their explanation of violence argument. Ask yourself what the app explanation of violence is. We literally don't talk about violence at all. We're not some form of like, util app, which is most of what their research project stuff assumes. The research project stuff is not for the research project stuff is incoherent because we are reading a policy app, which is what is in the context of it. It's in the context of things like fiat. The only thing I have to answer is the performance they said, which is incoherent because winning I did something bad on one flow doesn't mean that you literally couldn't do anything at all. 2 is that if I win a turn, it means you did something actively bad, so you'd have to weigh between the forms. It doesn't mean you link, you lose. That's an incoherent argument. The procedural fairness link is not framed as link and all K fairness, which means that it doesn't matter. Also, the card is in the context of skewing fairness IRL, not debate fairness, which means that there's no contextual warrant to the way we are trying to apply fairness, but we're conceding that it's a wrong idea and not going for fairness violations in the 1AR, which we're allowed to do. The K proper permutation double bind, all links to the Yapper exists in the scope, Western philosophy, ideal theory, etc. happen every day, but either the alternative is strong enough to overcome the tiny link of the app, or it's not, in which cases it can't overcome the whole structure of these events, which outweighs because it solves material harms of extraction and framing. Permutation to the opposite with the mindset of the K, this solves the K because we pass the app, because with the intention of helping helping natives with the understanding that the state is bad while materially improving their lives. On the alternative, the one is if we win, there's no link to the alt is incoherent because you're refusing nothing. Why vote F2 is that you're removed to innocence. They speak for natives and create a distance between them and their suffering. Education, documentation, the histories of violence and debates do nothing to resolve the material impacts and actively create a class of settlers who profit off the descriptions while displacing any real demand to change the politics by viewing themselves as agents of change rather than activity rather than any spill over the ontology stuff. I'll just answer it anyways. It over-identifies natives as victim colonialism when views their individual personalities with the capability of appropriating the world around them. Individual tribes cooperated with Western to gain power with the tribes of Rockies Confederation, accessing Western weapons to dominate other tribes, etc. Humans at some level are all different, have unique perspectives.
win ontology, we win the round under whatever rule of the ballot you adopt, winning that state engagement will always intrinsically require the elimination of indigeneity, means that the plan itself coerces itself through indigenous genocide, which is the reason to reject the app both under truth testing and our role of the ballot. Settler colonialism is the condition of possibility for the occupation of land, the ongoing elimination of indigenous people, first language policies, and the assertion of settler sovereignty. Any policy is intrinsic to structural dispossession because it requires imagining America as a settlement and open nation state where natives no longer possess sovereignty of their borders. This is not an induction argument. This is just that the structure of settlement means that in order for the government to have action, it must eliminate indigenous agency because it assumes that the government has agency over land. That is an intrinsic feature of settler colonial governmentality, which is the fundamental thesis claim that the 1 year has dropped. Here are 3 reasons for ontology dropped out of the Tuck and Yeager offense. Noted to our responses. 1. The structure of settlement overdetermines everyday life. Land dispossession is intrinsic to any policy reform because it requires imagining America as settled and already opened, whereby the government has the authority to implement policies in the first place, which imbue settlers with drive to elimination in order to reify their claims to land. Second, in order to engage, natives are forced to assimilate to the colonizers' model. It's a false choice between conforming to settler legalism or the threat of physical elimination, i.e. in order to do change, they must engage with a government which is built on the theft of their lands. Third, even if natives get access to the political, like the example that the 1 year tried to give, their voices are a tool to legitimize institutional engagement, i.e. how the 1 year weaponizes examples of indigenous engagement with the state in the past to justify state engagement more broadly, ignores how for the state to exist, it must steal that land from native people. That is an intrinsic feature of settler sociality. Settler society requires theft in the first place. At the top, they say that they destroy borders. 1. Ontology means that this is just not responsive because it's a question of how they destroy that borders, even if they might conceive of the environment in a good way that is responsive to arcade. Their assumption that the federal government has the right to implement policies to regulate the environment, to prohibit anything is exactly what we have criticized. The alternative would solve all of this offense, which he said is not unique to them, because the alternative is a refusal of settler ideologies in every instance. That means that a refusal of the absent assumption of government power, a refusal of kind of settler extractive logics, etc., which is also why we solve the case, which is also a dropped argument, because we also refuse extraction. It's just a question of how you refuse that extraction, i.e. through the government or not through the government, which is that even under truth testing, it doesn't make sense. They say that it's a question of reorienting our argument. Because of truth testing, the resolution is not just fossil fuels good, bad. It's a question of whether a government prohibition is key, which is what the entire 1 year has missed. They say that it devolves to intuitions because that's how we know indigenous death is bad. They've dropped the fallacy of origin argument from the case page. Just because intuitions are key to every other argument does not mean that they're normatively a good thing. I.e. just because we need oxygen doesn't mean that we should practice increasing oxygen as a normative thing. Just because we use intuitions on a daily basis to prove that indigenous death is bad does not mean that we should prioritize intuitions in every framework. The 1 year just dropped every single argument that the 1 made on the framework page, which means that intuitions is obviously false, which will be done later. They say it's a link to our framework, not offense, but then we'll win our role of the ballot argument, which is the framing arguments below. I'll do that framework stuff here. Our interpretation is that you should not only evaluate the 1 as a policy. This was obviously implied offense against truth testing, because this is a reason why you should not only evaluate the merits of the plan or the merits of the resolution. They have dropped fundamentally all of our offense. Plan focus is bad. It is racist. It allows debaters to say racist justifications for the plan under whatever framework and not be held accountable for that, because it's not tied to the consequences of the plan. That uplayers every single argument that the 1 year has made, because they've dropped that accessibility is a prerequisite to everything else. It's a question of our ability to engage, which means that even if they win that truth testing is constitutive to the activity, your jurisdiction only matters if you have debaters to jurisdict over or have debaters to legislate over, which means that the rules of the game only matter if there are players in the game. So accessibility is a prerequisite to every other argument that they have made, and they just didn't do any weighing in the context of this argument. They say it's a link to framework, not our offense. I'll do the intuitions. Like here, intuitions is bad. The Rifkin evidence, which is drops, is that settler ideals view access to place as a given, something that is taken for granted, something that is intuitive. That is why throughout history you see settlers expanding abroad due to manifest testing logic, urban homesteading, Spanish Christian missionaries, etc. They will say that this is induction. No, it is not induction. We are not saying that those things prove it. Those are just examples we are giving so that you can understand our argument. You don't need to use those to prove ontology. Just that our understanding of place is necessary. They say that this is a link to policy ops. I'm not going for that for the violence link, which is that this is not relevant. They say that procedural fairness, the Stanley evidence, is not in the context of our argument. The Stanley evidence says that the assumption that everyone has equal access to spaces like debate, etc., is fundamentally wrong. This is a carded structural fairness argument. They assume that everyone can play the rules of the game equally under all of their truth testing offense, that everyone has the same access to the space, which is wrong because their interpretation pushes out minority debaters because it justifies microaggressions, etc., which is our entire framework offense. Now, the critique proper, they say permutation, double bind, none of the perms make any sense because the alternative is a refusal of the app, which means that any permutation would have to be severance. The alternative under our framework offense and under truth testing means that you should refuse the resolution, refuse state engagement in every instance, which means that the perm double bind makes no sense. Second, our framework arguments means that it's not a question of our broader method for engagement. We did not say decolonization in this round for a reason. We don't need to win that the alternative materially ends at genocide at all outside of the real world. We just need to win that they did something racist and they should lose for it, that they defended a plan that was racist against native people because it assumes the settler government's legitimacy, which answers the rest of the perms. They say perm African mindset shit. That's obviously intrinsic because that is neither in the plan nor the alternative. Intrinsic is bad, makes it possible to generate links. It means that they can always perm out of our offense. They say no link because the speaking for natives argument is ridiculous. This assumes that we write decol, you should change your blocks. We never said that native people should do this thing. We just said that we should refuse settler ideologies. We should refuse things that are genocidal, which is not speaking for natives in any instance. Second, almost all of the 1 authors are natives, which is that we're not speaking for them. We're reading them to critique. The conclusion of this argument would be that settlers should never introduce arguments about indigeneity in debate, which turns it into white echo chamber, which is bad. The ontology ontology false is the only winning two are here. Their argument was just that this is homogenized because native tribes cooperate with Western tribes. The only reason native tribes cooperated with the West in that instance was because they were forced to in order to gain access to their land. If native tribes did not cooperate, they were pushed off their land, they were murdered, they were eliminated, they were genocided, which is a false dichotomy that the one here has missed. If we win ontology, the plan is bad. Under truth testing, the plan should be rejected, and their framework is just false because it relies on intuitions. The truth testing offense, all of our roll off the ballot takes out truth testing. It's a reason why focusing only on the plan is bad. We read plan focus bad, so you cannot go for truth testing. Second, if they've just dropped every reason intuitions is false on the framework page, they drop that it's arbitrary because we all have different intuitions. They drop that it collapses to naturalism because our intuitions are based on naturalist properties. The reason that I intuitively know death is bad is because I can see people dying and see the harm that is happening. The reason I intuitively know things like fossil extraction is bad is because I see the harm it has to the environment, which means that even their framework relies on induction, etc. And they just drop this argument, which is that there's 100% certainty. Like, they functionally drop a carded ontology arguments, which is that any state engagement is bad. That is a DA to the plan because it means that the plan is a bad thing under truth testing because it assumes the state has jurisdiction and that any state action is bad for native people intrinsically, not based on induction.
Okay, 2 minutes. Okay, just a K. Everyone get it. Cool.
Going for the permutation double bind, all of the links to the FRD exist in the status quo, Western philosophy, ideal theory, etc. happen, all government actions, etc. happen all day, every day. Either the alternative is strong enough to overcome the timing link to the app, or it is not, in which case it can't overcome the whole structure of these events. The permutation outweighs the solves the material harms of extraction and framing via the conceit of the axiarchimism offense. Here's the way you frame the debate. If a government action is inevitable, there is 100% strength of chance that the government action will happen. It's a question of whether or not the alternative can overcome that process. If you think that the alternative is strong enough to overcome that process, that means you're voting affirmative because it means that it's non-unique to the affirmatives are. We have a risk of offense that we can at least resolve for some material harms of the process via the axiarchism offense, or it's the case that government actions aren't necessarily a good thing, in which case you just vote out because there's a permutation which is conceded. This you conceded the reason for it always, and all of your arguments are silly. You say that, or you should hold the line for the explanation of the alt. They explain the alt as something that refuses extraction and settler colonial processes, not necessarily just the aft, which means it's not a question of, oh, the alt has refused the aft, which means there's no permutation. It's a question of the alt refuses the process of settler colonialism. If I win that the aft is better for settler colonialism and that the processes you talk about are inevitable, which was a conceded argument coming out of the 1AC, the permutation double bind is conceded. You say that your framework arguments to make it mean it's not about a broader question of method of engagement. It's a question of if you're a racist, whoops, you concede the turn to the performance. This is which that it's a question of broader method of engagement that you link you lose is a bad model. rebuttal, which was 1, that it's incoherent. Winning, I do something bad on one flow doesn't mean I literally couldn't do anything at all. And 2 is if I win a turn, it means that you actively did something bad. So it flows both ways. It's not a question of you link, you lose. It's a question of engagement towards indigenous people, which was your conceded argument on the performance. They said, which is why you need to learn how to flow. You say that we didn't go, the intuitions turns don't make sense. We didn't go for intuitions. We went for the offense, which means that all of the links are incoherent. The argument is not that the environment is an intuitive agent itself, which means we shouldn't environment, rather that the resolution intrinsically violates the ability for the environment to be itself, which is a bad idea because the environment is self-legislating and that necessitates intrinsic value upon the environment, which means that violating is bad. You conceded the application of the Christian evidence as a turn to the critique, which is that it means that it resolves all of your arguments because it views the way or changes the way we view land in the first place, which solves the structures. It literally says the way that structures up here become intuitively obvious and allow us to reflect about things like climate change, which resolve the link. It's a conceded argument coming out of the 1A, or the induction fails argument was conceded and does take out the link, which is a conceded application. They try to say that it doesn't, but it relies on prosody of the past to views the future. We'll concede ontology, but we're winning that we win under ontology because there's a link argument. They don't have a reason why ontology means we automatically lose. The federal argument is stupid because it's using the federal to literally reframe the way that the federal government operates in the first place, which is a Christian evidence. Look, here's the problem. The permutation double bind is functionally conceded. There's 2 arguments. First is that the alter's refusal of the app, that's incoherent. That's not what the permutation double bind means. It is a double bind for a reason. They say that their framework arguments means it's not a broader question of engagement. They conceded the turn that it is about a broader question of engagement because the performance they said is a bad model of debate. Even if it's a question of even if it's a plan-focused question, right? Like their stuff says. We're saying that's a bad model to say you link, you lose, which was a conceded argument. Good to be.